sunshine. I realize I am in sunshine. The skies are turning blue. Would you like to go to the top of sunshine?
Hello, in this video we're going to talk about what is the Byu Evolution Packet. Now in another video I've talked about what is the official position of the church, but I want to specifically talk a little bit more about the Byu Evolution Packet, as that was really the fundamental I would say document that was used for a long time to really help students, particularly at BYU, but also elsewhere, to deal with contradictions or apparent contradictions in science and religion. So I want to start with kind of a history, kind of a personal history first, and then more of a historical explanation of this document. To talk about this, I want to go back to when I was an undergraduate student at BYU. So I was there, I started in 92, and then I came back after my mission and continued my studies. But while I was there, I remember going to one class that was a science class, and they were very pro-science, very pro the earth is really old, very pro that evolution happened. And then I would go to a religion class perhaps, and in the religion class I would be fed the ideas that the earth is really young, and that there was no death before the fall, and that evolution is evil. And in both classes, it was interesting because they could provide a number of what was maybe authoritative statements, from leaders of the church past. Some would be very pro-science, pro-evolution, and some would be very anti-science, anti-evolution. And so this was a problem, and it wasn't a problem just for me, it was a problem for a lot of students. So BYU decided to do something in 1992, and they put together a committee, and they created what's called the BYU Evolution Packet. The way this packet came together was, first, this committee decided to try to find all what they would deem official statements about this issue of evolution and the origin of man. All of those statements were sent up to the board of director, which are the apostles, right? First presidency, the apostles, and the leaders of the women's organizations. And they looked at all of this, and I'm sure they discussed it, and then they sent back basically the statements that they thought could be included. And so after this process was done, it ended up being the BYU Evolution Packet contained 4 statements, 3 of which were First Presidency statements that were given publicly, and the 4th comes from the First Presidency, but only from their private meeting, the minutes from their private meeting, and these minutes were able to be published as part of the evolution article in the Encyclopedia of Mormonism by Bill Evanson. What's interesting, though, to notice is that they left out all statements that were by just a prophet, all by himself. They left out things that were given by apostles, but not when they were prophets. They left out a ton of stuff. And the only thing they kept in, essentially, were First Presidency statements. I find that pretty fascinating. And I'm not going to read through all of these. There are other resources to read the entire BYU Evolution Packet, but I'm going to dive into some of the things that I think that are important here. So there's the 1909, 1910, 1925, and then the 1992 Evolution article that contains the presidency minutes from the 1931. But the first thing we can say is that in 1909, the reason they were giving this statement was because this was the 100-year anniversary of the birth of Charles Darwin. And so all of the newspapers and everyone, were like asking all religions, not just the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they're asking all religions, what do you think about Charles Darwin and evolution? And essentially the church came up with this document called The Origin of Man. Of the 4 documents, this is by far the one that contains the most anti-science and anti-evolution rhetoric in it. And it was also given at a time that there was a lot of talk going on at BYU, like should evolution be taught or shouldn't it be taught? After this document was given, then it really didn't calm things down. In fact, it made things probably even worse, and there was more and more discussion. And so in 1910, as part of a portion of the Christmas message, the First Presidency gave another kind of talk on this, where they highlighted some stuff from the 1909 article, and then they added a few other ideas. But they'd left out a lot of they didn't reiterate any of the anti-science or anti-evolution ideas. And then in 1925, this cycle repeated itself, because in 1925, this was right when the famous Scopes monkey trial was taking place in Tennessee. And once again, all of the newspapers and stuff are asking everyone, what do you think about this that's going on? And so they came back to the LDS Church, and the First Presidency in 1925 decided to publish another article, another statement, and this one was called the Mormon, in quotes, view of evolution. And this one's really interesting because it contains basically just reiterated statements from the 1909 First Presidency statement, but it also keeps out any of the anti-science, any of the anti-evolution stuff. So if you think that newer First Presidency statements superimpose on top of older First Presidency statements, then I think it's safe to say that the 1925 statement is the last time that the First Presidency ever said anything about the Mormon view of evolution. And they haven't said anything since then. Even though in 1931 they talked about it in their meeting, but they didn't publicly talk about this. And I find that fascinating too, because we have learned a lot about evolution. We've learned a lot about science since 1925. And so I think that's also very telling. Okay, so just a few of the things that come out of this packet. In the 1931 statement, as part of the 1992 article, they basically reiterate once again the 1909 parts from the 1909 statement, where they say the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, basing its belief on divine revelation, ancient and modern, declares man to be the direct and lineal offspring of deity. Man is the child of God, formed in the divine image and endowed with divine attributes. So I think this is important, that as far as I can tell, this is an official position of the church. We believe man to be men and women are the children of God. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that we're the literal physical children of God. It means that we believe that there are spirits inside of our physical bodies, and these spirits are the offspring of deity. They also said that upon the fundamental doctrines of the church, we are all agreed our mission is to bear the message of the restored gospel to the world. So here they say, leave geology, biology, archaeology, anthropology, no one of which has to do with the salvation of the souls of mankind, to scientific research, while we magnify our calling in the realm of the church. So it's kind of like in 1931, they're saying, look, let science do what science does, and let other avenues of truth-seeking do what they do. And we're going to continue to do what we do, magnifying our callings in the realm of the church. Now, going back to the 1910 statement, I really like this one. In fact, it's the kind of the theme of this YouTube channel, where they state, our religion is not hostile to real science. That's important. The church's position is that they're not hostile to real science. And that which is demonstrated, we accept with joy. Now, in 1910, I think it could be argued that still there was a lot of questions about a lot of subjects in science. Some things had been demonstrated. It was clear that the world was flat. It was clear that the world, was old. There were a lot of things that had already been demonstrated at that point, and so those things were accepted. Our evolution perhaps was not one of those, even though we had Darwinian natural selection, which was being more and more accepted and was being more and more demonstrated. We didn't know about all of the mechanisms of evolution, like mutation, genetic drift, gene flow, sexual selection. We didn't know about all the extent of all of the different mechanisms, especially things that have to do with the molecular data. We didn't know about DNA. We didn't know about how all of the molecular sciences work that we now have. And so we've learned a lot since then, but everything that we've learned that's been well demonstrated, I argue that the church basically, its official position is that it accepts that knowledge with joy. So that's kind of the evolution packet, right? And I would encourage any of you to go and find that packet and read through it for yourself and think about it, and think about also how it's changed. Think about how what they said in 1909 is different from what they were saying in 1925. And really think about this for yourself. By the way, this is the packet then that is given out to students at the beginning of the semester in either a science class or a religion class that deals with origins. And the instructors are taught not to go above or beyond that, but basically say that's the official position. And if they give out any other quotations from leaders of the church, they need to make sure and let students know that that's not part of the BYU Evolution Packet. So I think that it's important that everyone understand the BYU Evolution Packet has its place in the history of the official position of the church in regards to evolution.
Sunshine with me. The doors are open, the skies are too. Sunshine is coming in for me and you. Sunshine.